The JD Media Network.
Let's talk about the cause of and the solution to, what seems to be the cause of and the solution to all of these problems. The source of the problem continues to be the problem in many ways, and the source of the problem that I speak of is China. In an article published in The Federalist yesterday, which I know happens to be incredibly biased to the right, fully aware of the subjectivity that could occur, I just selected this one because I thought Helen Rayleigh, who is a senior contributor and also happens to be a Chinese immigrant, shed light on a greatly unspoken timeline by going through how and when China knew about this virus when it started in the fall of last year, and then how they dealt with it when officials first knew about it, government officials. And it's a little bit disconcerting, to say the least. When Chinese doctors went to inform their own government about what they'd found, which is a SARS-like virus, something that we've seen years before, they were reprimanded by Wuhan police for quote-unquote spreading rumors, according to this article by Helen Rayleigh, written yesterday in The Federalist. She writes, by December 27th, the central government's health officials were informed of a new coronavirus that was causing illness. Wuhan had 180 confirmed cases, yet Beijing waited until December 30th to notify the World Health Organization's China office and did nothing to inform the Chinese people. The important part of this is that on the same day when early whistleblowers, including two doctors, they tried to inform their colleagues in social circles about a suspicious new SARS-like virus, they were reprimanded by Wuhan police. So China tried to shut this down before it could get even bigger, and there's lots of articles that give this timeline. It's not just The Federalist. I just thought that Ms. Rayleigh's perspective, being a Chinese immigrant and having firsthand experience of the way this actually works, being in China, I thought that the subjectivity that she provided was very unique. And most of the data that she's actually reporting came from the South China Morning Post, which has sort of been the Chinese-based informant for the American public. Moving along in the more recent but still distant days of the beginning of the virus, China actually acknowledged its existence internally as being something that may have spread from a fish market, as described in a separate timeline written by Forbes. And this is really where you get into the nitty-gritty of the source of this virus. Elizabeth Breyer over at Forbes says that on New Year's Day was really when this thing, when China started to internally at least acknowledge it. She writes, Chinese health authorities closed the Wunan seafood wholesale market after it is determined that animals sold there may be the source of the virus. Though it primarily sold fish and shellfish, it also offered wild game like beavers, snakes, bats, and porcupines to eat. So, very disconcerting there. And that was New Year's Day in the American calendar, in the Gregorian calendar. 5 days later, China actually began to acknowledge publicly that this thing could be a threat. They said that they had discovered an unknown pneumonia cases that are not SARS-like or MERS-like, which are the severe acute respiratory syndrome and the Middle East respiratory syndrome that have affected many, many people throughout the world in the past couple of years. It took them a while, it took the world a while to really recognize this as a ginormous threat. In fact, socially, this wasn't really even talked about too extensively until mid-February or early March. Again, all this stuff that I'm talking about here happened on New Year's Day. So it took a while to there was a multi-week delay to get to the United States, at least socially. But on January 30th was when it got a lot of attention because the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus a global health emergency. The State Department of the United States also issued a travel advisory warning Americans not to travel to China. They set the advisory at level 4, reflecting its highest alert. Private industry also started to jump in there, and over time, there were more aggressive actions being taken by both private and public industry to sort of mitigate this virus or the potential economic effects that could have on their businesses. Now, this is believed to be the cause of the virus, this fish market, this wild animal market. That's what people are saying right now. I mean, there's tons of theories going on as to where this thing actually originated, but the United States CDC, Centers for Disease Control, seems to be going along with the idea that this did indeed come from an animal market in China, even though some Trump Senate allies seem to have some other disconcerting justification, a little bit more graphic, illustrating the culture in certain parts of China where things like this take place. Take Senator John Cornyn, who said this about the virus originating from China.
Well, I think China is to blame because the culture where people eat bats and snakes and dogs and things like that, these viruses are transmitted from the animal to the people, and that's why China has been the source of a lot of these viruses like SARS, like MERS, the swine flu, and now the coronavirus. So I think they have a fundamental problem, and I don't object to geographically identifying where it's coming from.
Although, according to The Guardian, who is getting their information from the potentially mendacious Chinese government, as all publications are, China has defeated the COVID-19 virus. Their numbers are dropping rapidly, but, they are still the country with the most cases, about 20,000 more than Italy, which trails them. So I think defeat in the use that it is here in this article is much too strong of a word. What, in my opinion, they are referring to is the fact that China hasn't seen any new cases in recent days, which is no sign of victory, in my opinion, even marginal. I mean, I think it is progress, but it is not victory. The only victory I would accept is this virus being totally cured, wiped off the planet, or maybe even a vaccine to treat the virus efficaciously, both of which are either in the future or just utopia. So that's sort of interesting. But The Guardian is reporting that, according to official statistics, China has defeated the coronavirus. Over the last 5 days, health authorities have reported only one new locally transmitted case of COVID-19, a patient in one province infected by someone traveling from abroad in Wuhan, the center of the outbreak, the country's worst hit area. Officials on Monday reported a fifth day without new cases. So good progress from the source of the problem. Not sure exactly what's going to happen in the future and whether or not they're actually lying about their numbers, which has known to be certainly true in the past.